Hello and welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath. I'm joined by Lisa Downs, filmmaker extraordinaire. She's normally our gal in the UK. Today, she's our lady in LA. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Coming in live from Hollywood, Heath, here
I hear
today
the
with
I hear the
my,
helicopters.
I don't know, what can you smell? Opportunity. Yeah. I'm so glad to be here on this very spooky special.
Yeah, we've got a horror-related topic for the Halloween season, and it's your topic. I want to give full credit. This is your topic, and I think it's a great one. It's essentially, can horror still scare us in the world we live in now, post-pandemic, with everything we've seen, with everything we've done and become? Can horror still scare us? And I think it's a great topic because I frequently, when I cover horror, someone will say something like, that's not scary, so it's not horror. Or is such and such a, when Get Out came out, there was a lot of conversation about, is it actually horror? Because some people are like, well, it's more social commentary than it is horror movie. And and I don't know, it feels like there's always these people that want to put horror in this box, or they want to define it to be this certain thing, or that it has to be scary. And I don't know that any of that's true. So we're going to talk about it in this episode. You want to kick us off with just like, where did this topic come from?
I think I had just when you talked about Halloween, and I was about to go and see Halloween, I was thinking about some of the horror films that I used to grow up with and that really scared me. And just by the way, on a side point, I didn't even think of the point of, does horror even need to scare us? So I had just been kind of mulling over. I wonder, like I remember watching things as a kid and needing to have doors shut and not having blinds open, and I wouldn't even have my toes out the end of the bed because it's this kind of excitement of like what horror does to you. But and then I was like, I don't know what the last film was that I saw that really freaked me out, and then
Yeah.
I just thought it would be an interesting topic. And um so I hadn't even thought, like I said, about the fact that it might not even have to scare you. So it'd be interesting what people watching this think. Um, I personally think there should be elements of some kind of experience. Like it doesn't have to be like a jump scare, but it has to kind of make you uneasy or make you think about things in a certain way or make you slightly uncomfortable. I think it has to take you out of your comfort zone in some way for horror. Um, but one of the interesting things that I was reading online about someone else who was talking about this topic is, I think there's a lot of external elements to horror and how we react. And really, one of the big ones is like, we don't scare as easily as adults. So, is there just an element of the older we get, the less any horror film is going to impact us or scare us? Kids, you're so innocent and everything's new, and, the boogeyman in the closet. And one of the scariest films I remember growing up was Pet Cemetery. Hated the new one, but the original one, the scene where Rachel, the sister's on the bed and she's like creeping forward, like that, still
Yeah.
the imagery of that, I just, even as an adult, I'm like, oh, I can't watch that scene. But I thought maybe there's just external factors. Like we're so desensitized to so much now. We have the internet, we have social media, we see all these actors that are supposed to be these like scary roles, like going shopping for milk. And, we see too much. We can debunk stuff online. So nothing feels as creepy as it could if we're just exposed to it on the screen, and also the environment you watch it in. I feel like films these days are going for more the jump scares because people are probably on their phone when they watch it. So it's more jump scares than like the other kind of horror. I had actually
Yeah.
written it down because I thought I read it. They're confusing screams with scares. So they're
What?
going for the screams. That wasn't mine. That was from the internet, so I can't claim it, but I really liked it
That's good
because
though.
it's
Yeah.
like people don't really, they think that, it feels to me that films these days have moved more into just, let's get that scream, let's get that jump. And they've forgotten the rest of the experience. Like films like The Omen and Psycho create an environment. It's atmospheric, it's visceral, it's, the music and the tension and the camera and the lighting. And it just feels like films these days, horror has kind of gone to a genre of, oh, it's an easy moneymaker. Let's just do whatever and have a few
Mhm.
jumps in it. So
Yeah. That's totally true. That's a great point, because I don't want to pick on any specific franchises, and I'm not going to name specifics, but I'm seeing there's so many franchise movies that rely almost entirely on jump scares, and that's not, to me, that's not really horror. That's something else. I guess if you go in a, if you go in a fun house at the carnival, and it's got like a oogie boogie guy that comes out and chases you, I guess that's a horror. I don't know. But for me, I associate, like, what I'm looking for in a horror movie is more like a pervasive sense of like ominous, an ominous tone. Now, personally, I also like fun more than anything, like fun horror. That's not, I'm not really big on the like, how edgy things can get, and like, let's see how many guts we can throw it. Like, we used 76 gallons of real pig guts for this movie. Like, I'm not super into that either. But like, the last movie that really got under my skin, we should compare notes. Like, the last movie that really got under my skin was Rob Zombie's Lords of Salem? Yeah. Um, and it's not even, it was no particular part of the story necessarily. It was just this impending sense of dread. And then he starts cutting in all this, it was like hyper cut with, it was almost like a music video. It's just like strobe, strobe, strobe. And it just made me really anxious and uncomfortable. And I'm glad I didn't see it in the theater, because I probably would have had to get up and leave just because it was too much. But he really created this sense of fear and dread. And like, I couldn't I can't rationalize it now. I'm like, what was it that freaked me out so much about that? It was just this feeling. And it does feel like sometimes we're getting further and further away from that. I haven't seen a movie like that in a good long while that actually, I don't really get it from the new Halloween movies. It kind of seems, but here's another thing is like, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloween franchise, Chucky. I'm trying to think of the icons, like Friday the 13th. They were never really scary or dreadful. It was kind of just like, let's watch people get naked and then get killed, Maybe it's for kids, to your point. Like, kids are, it's, you respond to things differently when you're adult. I'm talking too much. I'm going to kick it back over to you. But like, yeah, dread. Like, I'm looking for dread. Jump scares feel cheap to me.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've realized that I love about the favorite type of horror film that I find not scary in the sense of like the, looking behind the couch at night or whatever, but is when you get a film that it actually could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really love The Purge. Like, the idea that that was like a real environment, and we kind of live in a world that I wouldn't be surprised if something like that would happen,
Yeah.
And Strangers, was it, where they had those Hessian masks, and
Yeah.
something like in the kind of real world where it isn't so much paranormal. Although I did like Paranormal Activity because I thought that was really clever. But the idea
But did
that,
you like Paranormal Activity 8 or whatever the last one
no,
was?
just the first one.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, if it's a really clever concept, like The Purge, I really, really love, because I thought it was a really clever concept, and it actually could, it was like a real life thing that could happen. Paranormal Activity, I mean, I loved Blair Witch when it came out. It was just so new. I recently saw Smile at the cinema, like the one I actually really liked that, because for me also it's an imagery thing. So I remember when I first saw The Ring, it's like the imagery of the black hair coming out, and they were kind of subtle in how they did things. Whereas I feel like as horror films get on, it's almost like Marvel with all the CGI. It's like they feel like they need to show you more and show you everything. Where really it's like, with horror is, I think, less is more. Like, if you had a film about a haunted house and you didn't see anything, like, to me, that would be better than some, demon coming out and you see it and it just looks cheap. And I feel like we see too much and know too much. And I feel like horror films too also now, they're just becoming the same. I mean, how many horror films are like set in New England where you've got some 2-story house with a staircase and no carpet, and then someone goes to Vermont to find the answers from someone who's been through it before? Like, it just feels like it's such a run of the mill easy thing that people aren't really putting in effort, because they always, like, you always hear people say, oh, horror is a genre that it'll always make money, it'll always be popular. So it's like people don't really try anymore. But real world stuff, imagery, subtle, it's not an experience. Like, horror should be, you should be in your house, like, not wanting to look behind you, all the curtains are shut, all the lights off, like focusing on the film. But now it's like the phone rings, you're checking TikTok, and it feels like the experience of horror has disappeared as from people watching and also the filmmakers making it.
Yeah, I love what you said about horror, a premise that can really happen, because when you watch The Strangers, I'm like, we were checking the front door, like checking the locks.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because
And
those
even
people do exist, and we had it happen in our neighborhood. It was like Christmas time a few years ago. Someone was just walking into houses.
yeah.
And why? Because you were home. Like, that's the
Yes.
reason.
Oh, I'm getting so I think maybe we've answered our question. Like, as an adult, we can still be scared.
Yeah.
But it's more of a real world thing. As a kid, you don't really know enough about the world to know what could possibly happen or not. But now, Scream was probably one of the first films that I was like, what are the like, if someone comes around, what are the chances they're going to do it while I'm watching this film? But I was still like, looking round, like carrying a knife or something just in case something happened. So yeah, it's freaky. But yeah, I love the idea of horror, and I love the idea of having just kind of being on edge with a film, or a little nervous when you hear a sound. And I wish we would get back to some of the kind of old school.
Yeah. You want to talk about, atmosphere. So the Blair Witch Project, when it came out, I saw it opening night in the theater. And there was the conversation around it. Like, we knew it probably wasn't real because it's not really legal to show people like dying on film or whatever.
But it was still a question.
It was still a question. Yeah. We were like, it's probably not, but what if it is?
It was so clever. It was really good.
That night, so I saw it at like the last show on a Friday night. And we lived in the woods. I was still living at home at that point and with my parents, and we lived like out in the woods. The last house on a cul-de-sac that was just all the other sides of it
The
were
last
woods.
house on the hill, was it?
That's right. And so I got home at like midnight 30. It was like 12:30 at night, and it was super dark, and all the lights were out in the entire neighborhood. And as I'm walking up to the door, an owl was like, ooh, and I was like, did it say Josh? Like, I made fun of the movie, like when my friends were like, that couldn't happen. But then I got home and I was all alone, and it was in my head. And I love when things can get in my head like that, because it's not common. So, is it because the Blair Witch could happen? I don't know. But the Blair Witch didn't really that's to your point. It didn't really show us a lot either. It kind of left all of it to our imagination.
Yeah. And if you did it now, there'd be some like crappy witch that would come out, and like they would ruin it. And for me, going back to the idea of the imagery in the films, that shot at the end where he's just in the corner and you only see him for a little second, I couldn't sleep for weeks after that. It was so well done, because it was so subtle and just so clever. And yeah, it was really good. Oh, it's creepy.
So we need new ideas. We want some fresh stuff. I mean, it's fun to have. I like these franchises. I have action figures of all the monsters. I have action figures of Freddy and Jason. Like, I love this stuff, but I also love seeing new ideas. And I hope that we're in a place where people can take chances on it. We do, every time we have these conversations, somebody's like, there are plenty of new ideas. You just have to find them. And that's true, but they don't blow up all the time like some of this other stuff does.
Yeah.
Maybe what was the last one? That was it, Midsummer? Really, that took off.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet.
Folk horror is still a pretty accessible genre that needs to be more recognized. But I don't know. I feel like that's a good place to leave it. We kick it to the audience and see what they think about it. Like, can horror still scare us? And what horror scares you? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Well, tell us what's going on. Tell us you're on location filming.
I feel like it was funny, we were talking about this just before we press record. I'm like, it's probably about time I start to finish it. I'm still here doing the Never Ending Story documentary, but this is the last shoot. So after this week in LA, and I was in North Carolina, but after this week in the States, I'll be back into the edit suite and working furiously to finish it, which is really exciting. And then some exciting things coming up soon that I'll announce in another show.
How's your TikTok going?
You know what? It's going pretty well. If anyone wants to follow me on TikTok, I'm still learning, but I'm getting there. It's Life After Movies. It's an interesting platform to look at and work through. But I can see how it could be valuable. So everyone follow Life After Movies.
That's right. And I'll put links in the description of this video for all of just hashtag Lisa's links is what it is.
Yay.
So everything will be down there. It's always so much fun to talk to you. You have great topics and you bring a whole aspect to Cereal at Midnight that I appreciate. So thank you for being here and thank you for introducing this topic.
You're very welcome and thank you for having me.
Guys, continue that conversation in the comments below. And until next time, we will catch you later.